Yeah.
I like that. Welcome, everyone, to the October 27th City Council meeting. And welcome everyone home and here. We are going to, I was going to move the calendar up, but we have 5 people to speak. I think we can just go in regular order. So first up is a public forum. Public forum is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the City Council on any city-related issues, except for those items which have already been heard by a hearings official or are on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. The timer and lights indicate the time you have to speak. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. First up is Ward Beck, followed by Sam Hahn.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Ward Beck. I live on Spyglass Drive in Councilor Clark's ward. I really came tonight to talk about homelessness, but I did come because I have been to almost all the meetings on City Hall and listened to that, and I just have to say, not everybody but the City Council largely is in some kind of twilight zone on that whole City Hall thing, and I'm convinced that if you brought it back to the citizens of Eugene today and really put all of the information on the table, they would see that you're spending way more money than it really would have cost. So I guess all I would say on that subject is the city should spend the money to have Turner redo an actual study. You should stop the demolition, and if you did that, I think you'd come to a completely different conclusion. But I did not come to talk directly about that. I drove down to the Cal game this weekend, and on the way, I had an old friend in Reading who lives in Reading, and I stopped and spent, I guess it was Thursday night there. And we think we have a homeless problem, but you should go to Reading. They're a city of 90,000 people, and they have between 8,000 and 9,000 homeless. The people who live, as my friend does, on a couple of acres a little bit outside of town, have resorted to building huge fences around their properties for protection. There are homeless camps, just kind of like what you think of as from the Depression. We're out in the woods. You know, there'll be 50 or 80 people. If you're driving down a rural road, you'll just see them out there camped. So I'm hoping that Eugene will get on top of this program and on top of the problem before it gets any worse. And in that regard, I think not using the existing City Hall structure to house or to shelter homeless people is almost criminal. There is no reason that that structure needs to be torn down tomorrow. Earlier tonight, somebody said, well, we've got to have a decision by November 6th. Why in the world we need a decision? And Mayor, last time I was here, I mentioned, I thought in jest, that the only reason to have the City Hall really on such a fast track is so that it could be finished by the time you retired. But now, I really don't understand it. And I really would encourage the city to think about using the structure that's over there to house the homeless. Here it is, the 1st of November. It's cold and it's rainy, and we've got something in the neighborhood of 1,500 to 1,600 homeless people out on the streets. If you put it to a vote of those people, they would come here and say, give me shelter from all of the elements. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Sam Hahn, followed by Marjorie Ramey.
Hello, my name is Sam Hahn. I live in, I'm actually not sure whose ward I live in, but I know that my business is down in Claire's ward in the Whitaker. I'm the chairman of the Whitaker Community Council, and I'm here tonight to ask your help with a lot of issues in the Whitaker. The growth over the last 8 years has been substantial, and for the most part, very positive. I think probably everyone in this room at some point in the last few years has been down there and sees that it's very different than it was. And it's fun. It has, however, created quite a few livability issues in the neighborhood. And they have been frankly just, I don't know if they've been overlooked or ignored or what the issue is, but the WCC, the Whitaker Community Council, has been trying to go directly to staff on a myriad of issues, and we kind of feel like we've just spent the last 7 or so months running around in circles trying to solve some issues. Parking is an enormous issue we have down there, and when I say that it's an issue, I'm not saying it's an issue for businesses. The businesses are all doing fine. I have a business down there, and somehow or another patrons are finding a place to park to come to our businesses. The problem is that the place that they're finding to park many times is in front of someone's driveway, or just blatantly illegally in on a corner or such where it's just not safe. We've been told by city staff that there simply isn't the budget to enforce parking issues down there, and so unless something is done about it and the city can find a way to come up with a parking lot, it sounds like the issues are just going to continue. The worst case scenario has already happened. One of our own board members was trying to get to a hospital and her driveway was blocked, and this was right on your street. So yeah, it's not out of a convenience or anything like that. It's a safety issue. The other safety issue that parking presents is that with everybody coming down to the Whitaker looking for a place to park, they aggressively are circling these very small residential streets, and we've had a couple of really close calls with kids right around 4th and Adams. That's a particularly problematic intersection that we've been in touch with Tom Larson about, and the answer that we received about why a stop sign couldn't go in there was because it costs too much to maintain the stop sign, which was, I'll leave that there. So yeah, the other issues that we have to deal with are a little bit more abstract and are a much longer conversation, but it is important not only to us, the residents and business owners of the Whitaker, but I think to the entire city of Eugene, that the Whitaker stays weird. And in order for it to stay weird, the artists need to stay there, and for the artists to stay there, the rent needs to stay low.
Thank you. Marjorie Ramey is next, followed by Kimberly Gladen.
Thank you. I'm Marjorie Ramey. I live on Fairmount Street in Eugene in the Fairmount neighborhood. I'm here tonight representing Terry McDonald, who, as you all know, is the administrator of St. Vincent's de Paul. He would very much like to be here tonight to participate in the discussion about the tax exemption for Bascom Village, but he was called out of town on business. Therefore, I'm here representing Terry. I serve on the executive board for St. Vincent's and on their housing advisory committee. In his absence, Terry prepared a letter and asked me to read it to you, which I'd like to do now if I may. Dear Mayor Piercy and Eugene City Councilors, this letter is to support the low-income rental housing property tax exemption for Bascom Village Phase 1. As you all know, St. Vincent de Paul has partnered with HACSA to develop 101 affordable multifamily units at Bascom Village. I want to thank all of you for your past support and funding of this project. The property tax exemption is an integral part of the project's funding. This exemption was requested in our original proposal and has historically been granted to city land bank projects. Bascom Village will offer rent levels at 46% of area median income, addressing the very high need in our community for very low-income families. Granting this property tax exemption is crucial in allowing Bascom Village Phase 1 to maintain those rent levels. Construction for Phase 1, which includes 53 units and a community building, is currently underway, and we're looking forward to completion by this time next year. Phase 2 should start construction next summer. Thank you for your commitment to this project and for continually supporting efforts to provide quality, affordable housing for our community. Regards, Terry McDonald. I think we'll all agree at the really critical need for low-income housing, and I personally thank you for your time and your consideration. Thank you.
Kimberly Gladen is next, followed by Sue Saralupe.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Braden, and I'm in George Brown's ward. And I came tonight to talk to you about the strip at the bus station on Olive and 10th Street and in front of the atrium there. I'd really like to see that a non-smoking area. The library is non-smoking, LCC is non-smoking. Anyone who's trying to be environmental at all and take the bus downtown with their families, their children, have to walk through a gauntlet of cigarette smoke. For an asthmatic or people with other health issues, for their children, the same reason the library area is non-smoking, that and the atrium area being city offices are in there, it should all be non-smoking, that whole little corner for people's health. I don't want to see you wait until you have some bigger, giant plan to make all of downtown non-smoking, because it's not going to happen. You know, every smoker, including environmentalists, will come down here if they smoke cigarettes and argue their human, God-given, and constitutional right to pollute the planet and smoke their cigarettes where they want to. I think a small piece, given the proximity to LCC and the library and being a public building and our main transportation, would be appropriate to have that non-smoking, and I think that's a battle that's doable for the health of our community. Also, I want to talk about the courthouse plaza right out here. You know, we've talked about this for the last 5 years. You've heard me talk about it frequently, you know, over the years, and nothing's been done. And I find it appalling that you, the county, the sheriff, and the police department can't get together and do something about open drug dealing, illicit activities. I mean, we had a stabbing this year. Market had to move their information booth for the safety of the community because many of us vendors, myself included, couldn't send a mother with 2 children over there after someone had been stabbed to run a charge card to make a purchase. Unthinkable. So we had to. And for you to leave those activities right there in the proximity of Market every weekend. And tents are going back up now on Saturdays and to really hide some of the darker illicit activities. And I don't see anything being done. And if you guys can't do it, you know, maybe we need to get the governor involved. Maybe we need to get a higher authority involved in this. Because the battling you do back and forth, you know, you guys got to get together and work things out. You know, I mean, you've let people run over the downtown over and over. I mean, the downtown seems to be under constant attack by different groups and activists. We're small businesses. We're small family jobs just trying to get by, trying to keep from being homeless. And we need the chance, and we need the air to breathe. Thank you.
Last up is Sue Saralupi.
Hello, my name is Susie Lupe. I've been living in George Brown's ward for over 20
Can you
years.
speak up a little bit, Sue?
Oh, I beg your pardon. Is that better?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I am also the clinic manager of Occupy Medical. We had a wet and soggy day at OM yesterday. Despite the torrential rain, 45 patients made it to our clinic. The tent canvas is still drying out under a shelter. Some of our patients do not have this option of getting dry. They just stay wet and cold. You may have seen an article yesterday in the Register Guard on an elderly, unhoused woman named Susan who takes shelter from the elements in the corner of the downtown landscape. The person featured has a special place in my heart. I met her a few years ago when Occupy Medical was just a little pop-up tent by the fountain. An officer pulled me aside and pointed her out to me. He was worried about her fragile health. He had seen her limp was worsening. He suggested that we meet. Susan was leery of me when I first walked up to her cart. She pulled back and ducked her head. She had discovered that it was best to stay unseen on the streets. After a brief introduction and a few minutes of speaking with each other, she warmed up to me and we soon became fast friends. I count myself lucky to be on Team Susan. She has a ready wit and a warm smile. Sorry. We are both animal lovers, and neither of us have outgrown our girlhood love of horses. This winter will be hard on her. She is worried that she won't last the season. There are many wonderful things that you, as City Council, have done to make our patients' lives better. Since the new bathrooms have popped up, UTIs have decreased with our patient load. Chemical burns from pesticides and herbicides that were obtained by laying on the grass in public park used to be a regular event. I haven't seen a case like this for many months. Flu control is much easier now with the hand washing station, which is available in the park blocks. You are making a difference. There is more work to do. We need secured sharps containers in our parks. We need another rest stop beyond Nightingale. We are in a state of emergency. People like Susan have nowhere to go. She tucks into a new corner every couple of nights. Tonight is her birthday. My gift to her is to advocate for her again tonight. Please lift the camping ban this winter. Please give Susan another chance to make it through the winter.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you for coming. Ask if council has any comments they want to make. Councilor Surratt?
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everyone who came to speak. Got a couple of remarks and then a question for the city manager. Just in terms of Mr. Beck's comment about the November 6th deadline, I do believe that was actually a question to a totally unrelated staff member. If we bumped her from our agenda at that work session, would that be a problem? And she was referring to a deadline for her project completely unrelated to the City Hall project. So there was no November 6th deadline related to the City Hall discussion that I'm aware of. I wanted to thank Sam from the WCC for coming down. Sam and I have been talking about issues in the Whitaker, and Sam's been doing a lot of work trying to address some of those. And I just thought it would be beneficial to elevate the issues up a little bit further for the council, so that, because I think there's, in addition to the parking, there's just livability issues, and then also the desire, as Sam ran out of time, to talk about wanting to maintain the cultural character of Whitaker and having some deliberate thinking around how we do that, how we embrace the change, but also maintain the character that makes Whitaker the place that's so special. So this was just the first part of initiating that conversation, and I'll continue that on with the city manager as well. And then to Kim's comments about the Wayne Morris Plaza, I had also asked you recently for an update on how the county was approaching that, what our role was with the county in that. And you might not have that update right now, but I'd appreciate that update in the next a couple of weeks.
I don't have it now, but we are getting it for you, and then we'll distribute it, of course, to the whole council.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I've got Councilor Poling and Councilor Clark.
Yeah, just for a point of clarification, during a discussion about the Eugene City Hall, we were asked to make a decision by November 6th to avoid potential change orders and or additional costs, and it had nothing to do with the actual start of decommissioning the old City Hall chambers. It was just that's the date that the team wanted us to decide by, so it wouldn't cost us any extra money.
Thank you for that. Councilor Clark?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate everyone who came. I wanted to say to my friend Sue that although I may not always agree to say yes to some of the requests I've heard about policy choices, I wanted her and others that support her to know that the council has had a lot of conversations by means of work session polls and emails that go back and forth between us about some of the things that we might want to be doing and how to be more effective this winter at dealing with some of the issues that you work so hard on. And just from me personally, I just want to say thank you for your service. I really admire how, in such a humble and admirable way, you just continue to help people. I kind of see your work like our own. I don't mean this to sound hyperbolic. I'm quite sincere when I say I see you like our own little kind of local version of Mother Teresa, kind of just out there plugging away all the time, not in the limelight, but just trying to help people. And I so appreciate your work. So thanks.
Councilor Taylor?
Thank you. I wanted to clarify that November 6th thing, too. I think we were asked to make a decision quickly. But I appreciate Ward Beck's comments about City Hall. I'm still hoping for a miracle that will make us decide to repair and retain. But since if we are going to demolish, which I guess is going to happen, I think it does make sense to let people take shelter there if they couldn't hurt anything if it's just going to be torn down. As for smoking, I think some of us have suggested banning smoking on downtown streets as they get more crowded. One day I talked to 3 young people who were smoking near the bus station and asked them what they would think about a ban, and they looked at each other and thought it over for a few minutes. Said, probably be a good idea, because if little kids are going by, they might inhale the smoke from our cigarettes. And I thought that was interesting. But that was only one small group of people. And about traffic safety, and I've asked many times if we could discuss pedestrian safety citywide. It's not just in Whitaker that it's hard to cross the street or that we need stop signs. There is frequently little respect for pedestrians. That's all. Thank you.
Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo something that Mike said, Sue, and the person that I thought of was Florence Nightingale, which seems very appropriate, and she's a hero of very many people, and I think you fit in that category too. I too have been wondering about the use of City Hall as a potential temporary shelter for this winter. I'm wondering if there's a portion of City Hall that's not going to be demolished in the short term, maybe the old fire station, which has a big bay area, or some other portion of it that might be available to, I know the whole thing wouldn't be, that would be ridiculous, but because it's going to be demolished, and that would impact that schedule. But I'm wondering if there's a way the city manager can look at that and see if there's a portion of it, maybe the fire station or whatnot, that could be used.
So I just wanted to add to this conversation with Sue. I'm appreciating her for her work, but I also want to say that the article in the paper, if you have not read it, points to a bigger, tougher issue. And I probably won't give totally factual information word for word, but what the article basically said is this particular homeless person has had so many people trying to help her. She's been in and out of so many places, but she has a type of illness that it's very hard for her to succeed in any setting that she's in. There was a large effort by her sister and other folks to try to get her where she could not harm herself, and they were not able to do that legally, which is, I think, another huge issue about people who have severe difficulties to take care of themselves, and there being no alternative to keep them safe. And that is a whole nother range of issues for folks in our community that live unhoused, and one that probably takes some state addressment. But I think I think she's not the only one in that circumstance. It actually has people who want to provide services, has people who want to care for her, and still finds it hard to let that happen to keep her safe. So she's lucky to have you for a friend. Thanks. Okay, we're going to move on to the consent calendar, and I'm going to pull, before you put out here, I'm going to pull item C at the request of Councilor Zelenka, and you can go ahead and put the
I move to approve the balance of items on the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay, I don't see anybody in the queue on that, so we'll vote on that. All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and none in opposition. Item C, Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, I had a few questions about that. Maggie, hi. So this is approval of resolution to annex the land, the Dreyer property near Hendricks Park, and this allows the annexation, but it doesn't approve the project. It only allows it to move forward to the next step, correct?
That's correct. To develop the property, the owner is contemplating a planned unit development. At a minimum, a subdivision would be necessary.
Can you explain
So it's a public process.
Speak up a little bit, please.
Can you hear me better now? Yeah. It's a public process involving public notice, a public hearing, stringent approval criteria about disturbance of the land, cuts and fills, tree preservation.
So there's many more points of input and decision-making that occur. This just allows it to move forward into that process.
That's correct.
Without being annexed, it couldn't move into that process because it
That's
wouldn't be
correct.
within the city
Right.
limits. Okay. And it's common practice for the city council to approve these annexations, and we have done it numerous times, especially in the River Road, Santa Clara area. What would be the criteria for not approving an annexation?
So the approval criteria are mainly that the property needs to be contiguous to city limits, which it is. It's virtually surrounded by city limits. It's somewhat of an island of unannexed territory, and needs to show that urban services can be provided to the site. We've referred the project to various service providers, and they've all confirmed that it's really a matter of expense, but that services can be provided and extended at the developer's expense as part of the development process.
Right, so all those services would be extended at the cost of the developer, not at the cost of the city.
That's correct.
I guess the one big issue that the neighbors have revolves around the street capital that would be the access road for that development, and whether or not it can handle that capacity. But that issue and the improvements that would be need to be made will be decided in a later process. And if they are needed to be made, then the developer would pay for those.
Yes, and I've heard from some of the neighbors as well. I've met with them about their concerns with the safety of the roadway, and that is something that the development review process includes, is we involve our traffic engineers, fire marshal, to make sure that there's adequate and safe transportation systems to the site.
Right, because it is kind of remote and it's a little windy road.
Right.
Right, and for instance, the new bridge over Delta Highway is actually being funded by the developer that built the apartment complex off of Good Pasture Island Road.
Right.
And so that's the type of mechanism that could improve capital. But capital is very constrained.
Right.
For a lot of reasons.
Right.
So that
Couple
issue is going
unsolved,
to, capital is very constrained for a number of reasons. Yes, very good. Best puns are unintended.
Yeah.
And so all those are decisions and processes yet to come.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you. As a part of that, because I'm less than familiar with this part of our area, are roadways like Capitol there as a part of this going to be annexed in as well as the property?
I'm referring to
And
my
let me
map.
get to the larger question. Are we now adding to our unimproved streets inventory by annexing any part of this, and then by doing so have a future capital project to improve, or ones that won't be improved by the project? Yeah, thank you very much. We both did it, didn't we?
So we're not annexing any right-of-way. The right-of-way
Okay.
is already in city limits.
Okay. Thank you. So, yeah, my concern is, I've said before, I don't want the city of Eugene annexing any more unimproved roads that add to the expense we'll have to pay one day to bring them up to city standards. So
Right.
it sounds like we're not doing that in this case.
That's correct.
Thank you.
So because we put the motion out without C in it, I think we need to make a motion about C in specific.
I move approval of a resolution annexing lands of the city of Eugene, Dreyer, Cynthia, and Thomas, A14-6.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please indicate. 8 in favor, none in opposition, it passes. So before we move on to the next item, I was supposed to have announced early that on November 10 there will be no public forum because that's a joint elected officials hearing night. So just for everybody to know that. Okay, next item is item 3, an ordinance concerning public contracts. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, Council will take action on public contracting code amendments. The proposed changes adds and deletes sections of the Eugene City Code concerning public contracting. Amendments include exemptions of certain classes of special procurements and public improvement contracts from competitive bidding requirements. The proposed code amendments are made in order to comply with legislative amendments and to remove portions of code that are duplicative or inconsistent with state law. These changes require approval from the City Council acting as the contract review board.
Okay, we're going to put the motion on the table, and then I'm going to call on Councilor Clark.
I move to adopt Council Bill 5128, an ordinance concerning public contracts.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilor Clark.
Thank you very much. Mr. City Manager, we had a couple of folks give us testimony at the public hearing on this ordinance about what they hope to see in changes to this, and that they gave us advice, which I've since had a little more detail on, about the value of the way Portland handles this and their program. Would you characterize our changes here as getting closer to the way Portland handles this?
So the conversation you had about minority and women-owned businesses is a different situation. So we actually didn't hear any public comment on this ordinance change. And these changes do not preclude any conversation or any activity you want to have around that.
And doesn't stand in the way or
not at all.
create any issues of us getting to that place?
Right.
Thank you very much.
We do have a council work session in February to talk about that again.
Well, I know this, but I saw some of the language here, and I just wanted to make sure that we weren't in any way. I'd like to see us getting further the other direction towards some of the things that the folks who testified on the other mentioned. So I just want to make sure we're in
We'll
good
talk
shape.
about that in February.
Thank you very much.
Okay, ready to vote on this? All those in favor, please indicate. 8 in favor, none in opposition, it passes. The next action, number 4, a resolution approving a low-income rental housing property tax exemption. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. City Council is asked to approve a resolution for a 20-year low-income rental housing property tax exemption for Bascom Village Phase 1, located on Parkview Drive. The project includes 53 units of housing affordable to very low-income households and is under development by St. Vincent de Paul Society of Lane County. Stephanie Jennings is also available to add additional background if you need to or answer questions.
Thank you. We want to put a motion on the table, and then I've got Councilor Clark and Councilor Poling in the queue.
Yes. I move to adopt Resolution 5121, approving a 20-year low-income rental housing property tax exemption for the property located at 2410 to 2466 Parkview Drive and 3060 to 3090 Matt Drive, Eugene, Oregon. Assessor's property account number 1862455.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilor Clark.
Thank you. I wanted to explain in advance of my vote that I'll be a no vote on this. I expect that the council will pass it. But I wanted to say that I am wholeheartedly in support of St. Vincent de Paul as an organization that we heard from earlier. I think they're one of the most fantastic organizations in our community helping people, and I have absolute support for them. But in this particular case, I'll vote no because this particular project is absolutely in the wrong place. It's in my ward, and we've had conversations about this, and while that land has been land banked for this project for a long time, the surrounding number of multifamily units that will be in this area is, in my opinion, inappropriate to this area. My understanding is that it is not a part of this project to complete a sidewalk from this particular area to Crescent. Am I right about that?
I'm not sure I heard your whole question.
The question is, my understanding, it is not a compulsory part of this project to complete and to construct a sidewalk from essentially Parkview there and where the property line ends, south along Coburg Road to Crescent.
So as part of the project, there are several pieces of infrastructure. So the development of the portion of Parkview and Matt Drive is part of the development of the site itself.
But there won't be a sidewalk built on that improved county road, is that correct?
So the development also paid into the fund for its portion of the future improvement of County Farm Road. The sidewalk to the south of that site is along other privately owned property that is not yet annexed within the city. And so as those parcels are annexed, they would be and developed, they would also be required to pay into the fund for the future development of County Farm Road.
Is that a no? We won't be building a sidewalk there, is that correct? At this time?
That's an off-site improvement, so it's not an allowed.
The reason I say that, I
CDBG
appreciate
funds or other resources that we have available to us.
It sounds like you're saying no, we're not going to compel them to build that at this time. One of the challenges that I have with that is that you have multiple new developments in that particular area, in the hundreds of units, many of which have kids. They're all, or predominantly, a large part are low income and will be utilizing the transportation system provided by Lane Transit there. So you've got a good number of kids walking along a county road with a gravel side and no sidewalk along the edge of a busy road to get to the bus stop. And I think it's a prescription for a real unhappy situation, and I can't support that we wouldn't compel a sidewalk built there. So I'm going to be voting.
I can offer a little bit of additional information on the public transportation access. So Lane Transit District has rerouted one of their buses, and so it now runs along County Farm Road, and there is a stop at Parkview Drive. So they would not need to walk down County Farm Road to reach the bus. Another alternative access that's currently available is they can walk to the west of the site, down Chuckanut, and reach Crescent through the neighborhood without having to go on to County Farm Road.
I'm aware of that. I don't know if you know, but I used to live a block away on Sherrill once upon a time, so I'm real familiar with the neighborhood. And I know that most people will, in fact, walk down the other part of County Farm there because it's the easier access than going through Matt or Chuckanut. But I appreciate your point. Mine is that when we see that, I think we're creating a dangerous situation that we ought to address. And it's a bad policy for us to be building so much in such a small area. That's why I'll be voting no.
But I would also just add to that, I do think it's an interesting policy question. For this particular development, St. Vincent de Paul is paying their fair share into that particular portion as it develops. I think the question really is it probably falls more into something for Kirk Corey to weigh in as a public works issue as opposed to the specific St. Vincent de Paul project on extending that sidewalk. And so I'll be happy to have Kurt weigh in on this conversation as well.
Thank you, sir.
Councilor Foley.
Thank you. I agree totally with what Councilor Clark has said about all the reasons why it's a bad idea to put this particular project in at that area. In fact, Councilor Clark and I were the only two councilors that voted in opposition to moving forward with this project, based primarily on the input from the neighborhood association as well as the neighbors, the actual people living in and around where this facility is being built. However, that was a discussion that we had. The majority of the council voted to move forward with the approval. And at this point, although I still agree with Councilor Clark that I think it's a bad idea to put that particular facility there, I will vote in favor of granting the exemption, because at this point, I don't see any reason to stand in the way of them moving forward.
Thank you. Councilor Zelenka?
So I guess I won't be making my motion to rename this Clark Village. But,
I'd pass it such a particular honor, but thank you, sir.
You call it Capital Village.
That's funny.
Would we need to change our policy for infrastructure development and housing development to require St. Vincent de Paul to build that sidewalk and to fund it? And would it then apply to all developments in the entire city, and it would require them to extend infrastructure beyond just their footprint?
I think
I'm not an expert on this. I'll let the city manager.
And I think this
answer.
is why it would be great to have Kirk Corey as a part of that conversation, because it really is a public works infrastructure discussion, which could apply to different kinds of projects. But I'd like to have Kurt weigh in on that whole topic.
If he could send us an email or a memo, put in our packet, that'd be good. But as it stands right now, we're applying our policy the way that we have it set. Correct. And it would require a change in the way that we do business in order to require this.
I believe that's to be true.
Yeah.
So Stephanie, I had heard recently that as this project is being built, they've worked with the neighbors. Can you tell me what the neighbors' response is there?
Yes. So St. Vincent de Paul is directly in touch with the neighbors. The project manager, Nora Cronin, is here tonight. They have had a number of discussions. They have ongoing communication. And I understand that those communications have been going pretty well. So I think that they have worked very hard to reach out to the neighbors as construction has commenced. And I believe that the Neighborhood Association feels that they have a direct line of communication with St. Vincent de Paul regarding any concerns they might have about the project.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you very much, and I too appreciate your work to do that. I know when we had the initial hearings and discussions on this, we had the McNutt room full of nearly 300 people from the neighborhood who were concerned about that, so I appreciate your work to reach out there and help them understand what's going to happen. I would say that our discussion around this, the policy question, highlights a particular issue that I hope we can get to solving. We haven't talked about it in detail, but I'll have a motion when we get to the MUPTI discussion that talks about how to deal with the impacts and mitigating impacts to multifamily developments. And this is one of them. This is a perfect kind of case where the idea that I'm having around this and that several councilors and I have talked about is the idea of SDC credits that allow a developer in process to get credit to be able to extend a piece of needed infrastructure rather than wait for it to hit the CIP and take years to get built, where it's easy to do at the time, they can get some credit for doing, and everyone is well served. So that'll come up a little later in our discussions around the MUPTI too, and I just wanted to kind of highlight that right now.
No, I think this is a little different discussion than the infrastructure issues that you're concerned about, but I had heard that and I think it's in general true that the quality of housing that's being built is the immediate neighbors are very pleased with how it appears and functions in in the neighborhood. So I think that, we have some of the best affordable housing projects you could ever hope to have. And I think some people always have fears that rise up about those kinds of projects, but I think over and over again, they find that they get a very high quality. You will be very happy to have it in your neighborhood. So, did we put it on?
It's on the floor.
It's on the floor. I'm ready to vote. All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 7 in favor and 1 in opposition. It passes. Thank you all very much, and that's the end of our business this evening.
Cool. What are you talking about?